Last week, we ended up when Saul was consulting the medium. Y'all remember that? He was trying to get a divine answer from the occult. You think that works? No, it doesn't.
What's wrong with that picture?
Right. And even this time, I'm not going to say it's the occult that's happening. And I want to be clear on that because I believe that God allowed Samuel to come back to give him this last message. Number one, because he trusted Samuel. If you remember what we were talking about last week and the weeks before, what Samuel said, you could nail it to the wall. His words didn't fall to the ground. You could count on them. So that is somebody that he would trust, him being a prophet of God. So I do believe that God allowed this. So Samuel's in the middle of his explanation. I'm just backing up a few verses just to kind of get us back in because I know we stopped off kind of in the middle. But the reason is because you did not obey the voice of the Lord nor execute his fierce wrath upon Amalek. He was supposed to wipe out all the Amalekites, and he did not do that. Therefore, the Lord has done this thing to you. So it was just because of disobedience. The people are already disobedient. They're already those stiff-necked people. When you're reading through the Old Testament, they're going to have a leader who is teachable, who is obedient, who does put their trust in God. That's why David is known as a man after God's own heart. It's not because he didn't mess up, because we know that he did. It's because the motives matter, okay? And I want to point this out too, because, we think that, well, if you were to go and you were to try to live a perfect life from here on out, does that get you to heaven? Just living a certain way. That's what the Sadducees, Essenes, Pharisees. I knew it was a P. I want to say Philistines. Pharisees. That's what they were doing. That's what we call legalistic. We're going by the book here, but we don't have a relationship. They didn't even recognize their Messiah. Okay? So we can't just follow the rules. Motive matters. Our heart matters. It says, moreover, the Lord will deliver Israel with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. The Lord will also deliver the army of Israel into the hand of the Philistines. This is not good news. Number one, they've been battling these Philistines off and on. They're going to continue to battle them off and on, even through David's time. But to know his death date is tomorrow. Now, he trusts Samuel, and now he's going to know that him and his sons are going to die in battle. In a way, it's not good news, but in another way, it's mercy, because he does get to get his house in order. He has time to ask forgiveness. Not everybody does, but he does. He has that, I'm going to call it a little bit of a grace period. Even if it is a short one, he still knows. Immediately Saul fell full length on the ground and was dreadfully afraid because of the words of Samuel. That tells us he believed it right there. He knew who it was. And there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no food all day or all night. And the woman came to Saul and saw that he was severely troubled and said to him, look, your maidservant has obeyed your voice, and I have put my life in my hands and heeded the words which you spoke to me. So she's afraid just because she's given him bad news. I mean, he's the king. He's got the power to kill her. She's already under a death sentence, or supposed to be, because she's practicing the occult, and he had already put those away. Now therefore, please heed also the voice of your maidservant, and let me set a piece of bread before you and eat, that you may have strength when you go on your way. It kind of sounds like, I want you to get better so you can get out of my house. Because she didn't want him there. The longer that he's there, probably the more threat upon her. He needs to go on and forget about her, right? But he refused and said, I will not eat. So his servants together with the woman urged him, and he heeded their voice. Then he arose from the ground, and he sat on the bed. Now the woman had a fatted calf in the house, and she hastened to kill it. Did I get that? She had a fatted calf in the house. Okay. I would hate to clean up after that in my house, but maybe it was different back then.
be a mess.
Maybe it was attached to the house. Maybe she had like a little shed or something. And she hastened to kill it, and she took flour and kneaded it and baked unleavened bread from it. That's going to take a little while, so it's not like he's there 5 minutes. So she brought it before Saul and his servants, and they ate. Then they arose and went away that night. Like she's probably like, glad he's gone. So now we're going to jump. And it says, now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. So they're in battle. They're not winning at this point. Then the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons, and the Philistines killed Jonathan. This is the bad part. I know. Because, we've learned about Jonathan and how good a friend he is and how faithful he is. Why did he have to die? Why?
That's the same questions we asked today. Why did they take
Exactly. Exactly. We ask the same things today. He not only killed Jonathan, but Abinadab and Malchishua, Saul's sons. The battle became fierce against Saul. Now that's one punishment that I would not want. And I say punishment, I don't know if it's really punishment. It would feel like punishment, I guess I should say. He's still alive and his sons are dead. If that's going to happen, I'd rather that be me first. You know what I mean? But this is fulfilling the prophecy of what he got from Samuel. The archers hit him. So he's got an arrow. He was severely wounded by the archers. Then Saul said to his armor bearer, now we go back to an armor bearer story, draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised men come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell on it. Now here's the thing. He did not want to become a trophy. He did not want to become a tortured prize, I'm going to say. Because if you remember Samson, y'all remember Samson? The Philistines got him. What did they do to him? They brought him out for their entertainment. They put out his eyes. They shaved his head. They made a mockery of him because of who he was. Because he was this great warrior. Okay? What do you think they're going to do to Saul, first king of Israel, who has come in, and these Israelites have conquered all of these groups? What do you think they're going to do to him?
Much worse.
Yeah, much worse. So he doesn't want to do that. So he commits suicide. That's what he does. When his armor bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his own sword and died with him. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and all his men died together that same day. When God says something, we should believe it. He should have got that from the very beginning. And it's one thing that he fails at. He's not teachable. He's not teachable. All the way from the beginning, he's not. He kind of started out good. He was humble. But when he got, I'm going to say the big head, what we say in the South, when he got the big head, he becomes disobedient. And if you remember, when they come into the promised land, God told them, there's never going to be an enemy that you're not going to be able to stand up against as long as you're obedient to me. When they start going to other gods, when they start failing, when they start looking elsewhere, that's when they lose. All right. And when the men of Israel who were on the other side of the valley and those who were on the other side of the Jordan saw that the men of Israel had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. They lost cities here. Now, you remember, they had conquered a lot of cities when they had been having these battles. So they got the cities back. So it happened the next day when the Philistines came to strip the slain. Y'all see that on movies. you've got the enemy on the battlefield. What are they going to come do? They're going to come take whatever they can take to pilfer, what they can get. They come to strip the slain, and they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. They knew exactly who they were. Everybody in the region would have known who these people were. And they cut off his head, stripped off his armor, and sent word throughout the land of the Philistines to proclaim it in the temple of their idols and among the people. Now they're giving praise to their false idols here. Now this is a little similar to what David did, is it not? What did he do? He cuts off the head. Now I'm going to tell you something here. Now it's not Philistine, like the Philistine belief that I know of, but in Israel, in the Jewish belief, and this is important when you get to the death of Jesus, they believed that if you, let's just say you died, your spirit stayed 3 days and 3 nights. It had that amount of time if you were going to be revived for that spirit to go in that body. After 3 days and 3 nights, that was when they classified you as legally dead. That's why it's important that when Jesus goes and heals Lazarus, how many days was it? 4. That's why Jesus had to stay in the tomb specifically 3 days and 3 nights. Because if he would have risen before that, it wouldn't have been the miracle that it is to the Jewish people, because that was their belief. So then they put his armor in the temple of the Ashtoreths, and that was one of their false gods, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beth Shan. So he did become a trophy. Even though, he wasn't alive for it, they're going to fasten him to their walls. This is our trophy. This is what we've done. Now, when the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all the valiant men arose and traveled all night, and they took the bodies of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Bethshan, and they came to Jabesh and burned them there. Now, there's a few reasons that they possibly burnt them. One is the mutilation, to hide the mutilation. Another one, we don't know how long he hung there. So he's probably already decaying. It's not going to be conducive of how they prepared their dead, so that's why they burned them. Then they took their bones and they buried them under the tamarisk tree at Jabesh and fasted 7 days. Now, if y'all are like me, I'm like, what in the world is a tamarisk tree? But they're native to this region, so I got one to show you what it kind of looks like. And they bloom pink in the spring. They kind of look like feathery looking blooms.
Japanese maple.
Mm-hmm. Try to zoom in so y'all can see it. But I had to look it up to see what it was. Okay, so now we're going to skip and we're going to go into 2 Samuel. So y'all made it all the way through 1 Samuel. I mean, it kind of reads like, I wish this was a movie because it is so detailed. So now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David had returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites again. Well, if Saul would have done what he was supposed to do in the beginning, David wouldn't have to be going fighting them. They've already got a problem with the Philistines. Now we're fighting the Amalekites. And David had stayed 2 days in Ziklag. On the 3rd day, behold, it happened that a man came from Saul's camp with his clothes torn and dust on his head. What's that mean? Grieving, mourning, right? So it was when he came to David that he fell on the ground and prostrated himself. So he's given him obeisance. So David said to the young man who told him, "How do you know that Saul and Jonathan, his son, are dead?" This is horrible news for David. He just don't want to hear this because David Jonathan is his friend. Then the young man who told him said, "As I happened by chance to be on Mount Gilboa, there was Saul leaning on his spear. And indeed the chariots and horsemen followed hard after him. Now when he looked behind him, he saw me, and he called to me, and I answered, Here I am. And he said to me, Who are you? So I answered him, I am an Amalekite. Now see, when I was reading that to begin with, I'm thinking this is somebody from Saul's army, that he saw this. This is an Amalekite that come to David. And he just got through fighting the Amalekites. So it's kind of a strange occurrence here. He said to me again, Please stand over me and kill me, for anguish has come upon me, but my life still remains in me. So it's almost like this is a mercy killing. He's probably trying to put it like, oh, well, Saul was he might have been bleeding out, or he's too injured. He's not going to live, so he asked me to end his life. Pretty much what he's saying. So I stood over him and I killed him, because I was sure that he could not live after he had fallen. Is that what happened? That's not what happened at all, is it? So this is a lie. But look what he says. And I took the crown that was on his head and the bracelet that was on his arm, and have brought them here to my Lord. This is so un-Amalekite-ish. They were the enemy. Now he had to be on the battlefield before the others came and stripped the bodies to see what they could get of the slain. He was one of those opportunists of the moment. So he was like, ooh, I know who this is. Let me get the crown and let me get this. I bet I can get a reward for it. That's probably his motive here. Therefore David took hold of his own clothes and tore them, and so did all the men who were with him. This is proof, because Saul's not going to give up his crown for nothing. And I find it a little bit amazing that he's got the crown on in the battle. Yeah, it's a little strange because, and I know we have that through the centuries where, even in the medieval period, the king's armor was like gold and silver and they stood out from all the other armor. I think it would be much smarter if everybody looked the same. That way you don't know who's who and what you're killing, because you don't know the king's dead. So if you don't know the king's dead, nobody's going to stop fighting. They're not going to lose hope, or if something happens to that effect. So apparently he's got this on while he's fighting. I think I want a helmet on my head instead of the king, but what does it show? What's important to him? His kingship.
He knows he's going to die,
right?
And his pride.
So instead of going out with my boots on, it's going out with my crown on.
One last time.
Yeah, that was what was most important to him, was his position. And they mourned and wept and fasted until evening for Saul and for Jonathan his son, for the people of the Lord and the house of Israel, because they had fallen by sword. Then David said to the young man who told him, Where are you from? And he answered, I am the son of an alien, an Amalekite. So David said to him, How was it you were not afraid to put forth your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? Now, this is why we read this account the other week. I don't know why they cut it out. So, we added it back. When he was in the cave and he cut the corner of Saul's cloak, he could have killed him, but he didn't, because just like that, the Spirit was upon him. It was like, no go. I can't kill him because he was the Lord's anointed. He trusted God to have vengeance, judgment, his plan, no matter what. Remember when I was talking to you that day, and I was like, he was right there. He could have ended it all. He could have used that for self-defense. I'm giving you, how we would think today. You don't have to look over your shoulder at all. This is what's going through my head. I'm trying to put myself in that position. If I'm David in that cave, I can end it right here. But the Lord says, don't do that. He's my anointed. So it's flesh or what God says. But is that not what sin is? That's the definition of it. And what are you going to put first? Submitting to God is saying, okay, God, I'm going to do what you want, even though I don't understand it, even though I question it or whatever. I'm going to do this and not do what I feel or what I think I need to, or I'm putting my opinions and all of this behind yours. I'm going to go with what you want to do. So it's the same today. And that's what gets me when we read through these Old Testament stories, we can still apply it. We can still see the humanity that's in it. Even though, like, David is a man after God's own heart, here he was so close to God. He was so quick to do what the Holy Spirit leads him to do. And even in life, I'll say, like, I want to be this close. I want to be so close as I can react like this when the Spirit tells me something. But through life, through ups and downs, it's going to be like this. And we have to, I'm going to say purposefully train ourselves to be close to God. Did you all wake up this morning and you say, well, I was godly yesterday. Happened by accident, but I was godly yesterday. Does that ever happen? It doesn't. When you wake up in the morning, do you say, well, I'm going to read my Bible, or I'm going to pray today, or I'm going to do this? You have to deliberately almost plan it because we're so busy. Why do you think that is? Does Satan not want to distract us? I tell this to the youth all the time. Satan doesn't care if you read your Bible. He doesn't care if you know your Bible, as long as you don't apply it to your life. That's the thing. You think Satan knows that God is real? He probably knows Scripture inside and out better than we do. But he also knows our weaknesses. He does. He knows just where to push. All right, so he says, then David called one of the young men and said, go near and execute him. And he struck him so that he died. And he's probably thinking, I'm going to get a reward. I'm bringing him the crown. I'm bringing him the bracelet. I took mercy on this king and went ahead and killed him, even though that's not what happened. David saw right through it. Do you think the Spirit helped him with that too? This man is what I would call a snake. He comes in and he says the right things and he thinks he's going to get ahead of somebody else, no matter what he has to do it, and he lies to get into this position, but that doesn't work.
That probably would have worked for anybody except David.
Probably at this time, yes.
If he'd have brought it to Saul, he'd probably been rewarded. If he'd have, even though it was Saul he killed, but bringing it to David, because David was so obedient to God, and tried to be obedient to God.
And I find it amazing that David's not only mourning Jonathan, he's mourning the man who tried to kill him at least 21 times. Now, I want to put you that in a human perspective too, because we talked about the cave. He could have ended it, he could have thought this way and, done this and done that. That would have been perfectly reasonable. But here, if somebody comes at you continuously trying to kill you, do you think you would mourn when they were dead, or would you celebrate? Just being real. You would be glad that they were gone because you don't have to worry about it anymore. But that's not what David does.
He had a long history with Saul, though.
He did.
It was way back.
He did. And, we...
Jonathan's father, too.
Right, and we read through this and we think it's really a short period of time, but Saul's already got grown sons, so it has been a lot of time throughout this. So David said to him, your blood is on your own head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. That was his justification for what he done, or for killing this man. Then David lamented with this lamentation over Saul and over Jonathan his son, and he told them to teach the children of Judah the song of the bow. Now, I thought this was interesting. I was like, the song of the bow, and my writer's mind started going crazy here, and I was like, ooh, that sounds like something like out of fantasy fiction. Let's sing the song of the bow. That's kind of what it sounds like. But we know, what is David? Is he a songwriter? He's a musician. He's a singer. This is just something like he would do. He says, indeed, it is written in the book of Jasher. I'm going to time out here because we're going to jump to something. And I want to warn you, because in case you hear this, there is a book of Jasher that is out there today. All right? I'm going to plainly say this. The book of Jasher that is out there today that they sell is not this book of Jasher. All right? They've gathered things throughout history and tried to piece it together. There is no manuscripts this old that we can trace back to say that it's genuine or anything. The book of Jasher that's pieced together today is much later on. So I don't want you to think if you come up upon the book of Jasher on Amazon that it's the same book of Jasher. And I'll go ahead and put this disclaimer out there too. Even the book of Enoch. There's a book of Enoch that's in there as well. There are other books, and I'll say this, that are not canonical. The books we have in our Bible today, I wouldn't add to it, and I'm not going to take away from what we have. Even though they say, oh, well, there's things that they call like the Gnostic Gospels. You've got the Gospel of Mary, Gospel of Thomas. Those were never accepted by the early church. They were written hundreds of years after. What we have as canon in our Bible today is what was accepted during Old Testament times, the prophets. So you've got history, prophets. And then when we get to the New Testament, these are the letters that were accepted by the early church. Anything else that was not accepted by the early church, we do not have. We trace that back through manuscripts. There's over 25,000 manuscripts that you can trace back to the New Testament Gospels, just the Gospels. So we know that they're accurate. We know that they're the same. There's not been that change even over 2,000 years. So now they have, like the Catholics have a different Bible. They have different books, added books, I should say, in theirs. We don't go by those. This book of Jasher, this book of Enoch, again, much later. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the book of Enoch was written in the period between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Enoch lived in the beginning part of Genesis. He's one of the first of the 10 generations. You remember, he was not, because he walked with God. That's a big gap. So there's no way he wrote this when it just appears during this time in between the Old Testament and the New Testament. So I would say be careful. Don't get into any of that because it is not canonical. So I just want to clear that up about the book of Jasher because it's not the same. All right, so y'all want to hear the song of the bow? The beauty of Israel is slain on your high places. That was talking about Saul and his sons, the men that had died on Mount Gilboa. How the mighty have fallen. How many times y'all heard that phrase? Did y'all know that was in the Bible? Y'all's grandma probably said, oh, how the mighty have fallen. That's where it comes from. Tell it not in Gath, proclaim it not in the streets of Ascalon, lest the daughters of the Philistines rejoice, lest the daughters of the uncircumcised triumph. O mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew nor rain upon you, no fields of offerings, for the shield of the mighty is cast away there, the shield of Saul not anointed with oil. From the blood of the slain, from the fat of the mighty, the bow of Jonathan did not turn back, the sword of Saul did not return empty. Saul and Jonathan were beloved and pleasant in their lives, and in their death they were not divided. They were swifter than eagles, they were stronger than lions. O daughters of Israel, weep over Saul, who clothed you in scarlet with luxury, who put ornaments of gold on your apparel. How the mighty have fallen in the midst of the battle. Jonathan was slain in your high places. I am distressed for you, my brother Jonathan. You have been very pleasant to me. Your love to me was was wonderful, surpassing the love of women. How the mighty have fallen, and the weapons of war perished. I'll stop there. That's the end. This kind of comes across as a little bit like a eulogy. He's given them a memorial, and even though his time over these years with Saul has been rough. He's continuously tried to kill him. He doesn't put that in here. He still sees him as good and pleasant as the Lord's anointed, when I would think most would see him as the enemy because of what he did. That's what it makes me think of when we go into that cave. I would definitely see that person as my enemy in that cave, but he didn't. And that's kind of like a wake-up moment. How can we see people different? And then you go to Ephesians 6, and what does it say there? We fight not against flesh and blood. There's a spiritual war happening all around us. But is there not a spiritual war happening with us? Whether we're going to submit to the Holy Spirit or quench it, right? So in 2 Samuel, it happened after this that David inquired of the Lord, saying, shall I go up to any of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said, go up. So again, he's getting in the same pattern. Before he does anything, who does he ask? That's good practice, isn't it? Before I do anything, I hope I do the same thing. And David said, where shall I go up? And he said, to Hebron. So David went up there, and his 2 wives also. Now, if you remember, he was given Saul's daughter. She is not mentioned here. She's already been given to somebody else. Okay? But he does have 2. We skip these. This is part of the ones that we skip. We skip those stories of like Nabal and all of that. Ahinoam the Jezreelitess, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal the Carmelite. So 2 wives. This is not exactly what God wanted. This is going to be part of his downfall, because God did not design marriage to be this way. And David brought up the men who were with him, every man in his household, so they dwelt in the cities of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and they anointed David over the house of Judah. Now, if you remember, how many tribes were there? 12. The Levites didn't get an area. They got Levite cities. So really, there's like 11 territories, I guess you would say. Right now, David is going to be king over just Judah, just over his tribe. And they told David, saying, the men of Jabesh Gilead were the ones who buried Saul. So David sent messengers to the men of Jabesh Gilead and said to them, you are blessed of the Lord, for you have shown kindness to your Lord, to Saul, and you have buried him. And now may the Lord show kindness and truth to you. I also will repay you this kindness, because you have done this thing. Now therefore let your hands be strengthened and be valiant, for your master Saul is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me as king over them. But Abner, the son of Ner, commander of Saul's army, took Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, and brought him over to Mahanaim, and he made him king over Gilead, over the Ashurites, over Jezreel, over Ephraim, over Benjamin, and over all Israel. So at this time, Saul's son is going to rule over all the rest, and David's just going to have Judah. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old. So you know how we're talking about time passes. Saul's not only old enough to have grown children, he's old enough to have grandchildren, really, because his son is 40 years old. So he began to reign over Israel, and he reigned 2 years. Only the house of Judah followed David. At the time that David was king in Hebron over the house of Judah, was 7 years and 6 months. Now Abner the son of Ner, I'm sorry. Did I? Okay, I'm good. Now Abner the son of Ner and the servants of Ishbosheth the son of Saul went out from Mahanaim to Gibeon, and Joab the son of Zeruiah. Now this is going to be, Zeruiah is David's sister. Zeruiah. She's important because she has 3 sons. Okay? And they're going to be part of David's army. They're going to be leaders in his army. And this is important because of what's coming. You know what? I'm going to stop right there. I know y'all hate it when I do this, but we're getting to one of my favorite people. The ninja of the Old Testament. I'm telling you, when I get to heaven behind Jesus, he's the one I want to meet. Abishai. I'm telling you, he's something else. What?
Oh, my back. And he said, you getting old?
Oh.
That went so quick, I didn't even finish my coffee.